questions to one at a time. If you have more than one, you can go to the back of the line and try to work your way forward. We'll get to as many as we can over the next, looks like 57 minutes.
Okay, the question I have is, are we going to be restricted to one starting city, or will we have racial starting cities like in the other games?
Oh man.
That's a great first question.
The perfect example of what we just talked about.
Yeah, it is.
So Dave, that's all you.
Yeah, we just can't commit to that answer yet. The history and lore that we have right now leans towards one direction, but we haven't finalized that answer, and it's been one of those things we constantly debate inside. And so when we have a final answer, we'll let you know. Sorry about that.
First off, I was asked to state that our Dune is stinky. And my question is, will our European friends have a chance to get into the betas?
Yeah.
Yes. That's an easy question. From a very hard question to a very easy question.
You know,
I like that.
the people in Zimbabwe can play too if they want to.
Wait,
There's some kind of disconnect that I have between the two games, Landmark and EverQuest Next, and I was just wondering why the design decision to name it EverQuest Next Landmark rather than just have it be Landmark and EverQuest Next. Even because there's such a Landmark feels so much more free than EverQuest Next because of the design aesthetic in EverQuest Next, but you can build anything in Landmark. So why?
That's strictly a business decision. We wanted people to be absolutely aware that EverQuest Next Landmark was the gateway to EverQuest Next. That it was going to be a vehicle by which we could allow the community to help us build that new NORAD. You can do a lot more with it, but we wanted everybody to darn well know that that's what it was for. That we really wanted to build that NORAD together, and that this was the vehicle. Yeah, but you can build anything you want to. But you can also help.
This is the lore question, actually, that I wanted to ask during the lore panel, but wasn't able to. I know it's kind of like the focal point, we say it's like a new re-envisioning, kind of like J.J. Abrams' new Star Trek movies and all that, and you can really see the difference in like EQ2, there is no moon, Luckland has been blown up, EQ1, Luckland's full of moon kitties and whatnot. But I was wondering from a lore perspective, I know we've seen in the demos the Karens, but the only continent we haven't heard from at all in any of the discussions is Otis. Are the Karens still from the Kara Islands, or can you go into any of the history behind them meeting the elves? Or?
we can.
Can we make sure the other mic is on?
Hello.
Okay.
Ready.
All right, Brian?
Well, the short answer is no. We can't talk specifically about how that goes on, but you're going to be seeing a lot more of that stuff that you're used to. Names like Otis and, I don't know, some of the other cities and whatnot are going to start coming up as we dive more into the story. And as we start, we'll be putting probably some articles up on the web or something that will describe a lot of that stuff. So you'll know a lot more of that going forward.
Yeah, too early to say.
My question is on mechanical transparency, I guess. When EQ launched, there wasn't even numerical mana, and there's been sort of a trend in newer MMOs of giving the players as little information as possible on exactly how what they have works, which is kind of an attempt to stop min-maxing, but the problem is players figure that stuff out anyways, so it just creates a have and have-not situation. People who know how things really work get the benefit. So to what extent are you planning on showing how everything works behind the scenes to the players?
So, and transparency is, in many things, is one of the things that we strive for. So you can certainly expect to see those things in combat. It would be, because you're right, people figure that out. There'll be a mod out there somewhere that points to these things, or you can modify your UI or whatever, and so we'll give you the information that's pertinent to combat. So.
If you choose not to look at it, if it's your preferred style of gaming, we don't force it down your throat.
Right.
But honestly, many of us are those min-maxers, right? We have an entirely transparent philosophy for reasons that you will learn more about in what's to come.
So I have many questions, but I'll stick to one. Hopefully somebody else will ask about trade skills and so forth. That hasn't happened. A lot of information on that, but
Nice prompting. Well done.
hopefully more information will come on that. But I'll stick to a question that I don't think will come up much, but I really thought Star Wars Galaxy had some great aspects to it, non-combat things, and some of one of the things about that game that I thought was very unique, and I'm hoping perhaps in EverQuest Next was that every object had a 3D spatial representation. So like your weapon, you take it from your inventory, drop it in your house, bam, there it is. Is that, or is it just an icon in the bag? So that's kind of hoping a little bit more representation on objects. I like vet voxels and world, but I'm talking like their swords or shields and that kind of stuff.
So we love galaxies. We could go into great depth. Expect to see stuff in the world, right? I want to hang my sword on the wall. And then some.
I have a fairly general question. I guess we keep hearing the term tiers, and I'm kind of wondering, is tiers kind of like EQ2 where you need like tier 1 nodes to get crafting and it's X locations? Or are we actually talking the tiers of the world? Like you can, you're on the ground, that's tier 1, and you drop down.
That's a great question.
We use it to refer to a number of things, right? One of which is certainly the tiers of content underground or above ground.
But it's not necessarily dictated to one area. So the area outside Kinos may be tier 1 on the surface, and it will get higher as you go down. But the area in Lobstorm, they start at tier 3 on the surface.
And the other thing that's very important is that character advancement also refers to tiers, and those two have an intimate relationship. So if Darren and I are going to be adventuring together in a tier 3 area, in general, we should be tier 3 or better in terms of our character advancement to be appropriate for that particular area. So the two match up in general.
First off, I hope you guys aren't going to let Jeff get away with stealing that Nagy hat because he didn't give one away last time.
Oh no, I realized we forgot one.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
give away both of them during this event.
I don't believe that we have forgotten.
And then my question. So in EQ1, night day was a real big thing. If you were, let's say, a barbarian, you couldn't see at night. You literally needed a torch to get anywhere. Okay, that kind of stuff. Also, obviously, mobs changed in the world, kithbits, all that kind of stuff. And you've shown off Forge Light. We've seen how nice it is. You've shown us the night and day. Can we expect races to have different infravisions and all that kind of stuff, or is it going to be?
So you touch upon a really interesting subject, and that's the pitch darkness of the original EverQuest game. I can tell you straight away that sort of thing, pitch darkness, is a bit of denial of service, right? People who absolutely couldn't see and couldn't play couldn't continue. You will not see it in our game. Starting, entering the game, not being able to move around, not being able to see anything, no. However, the use of darkness to exploit mood, situation, to bring out emotionality and fear, effectively a changing day-night cycle that is absolutely real, where you can adventure in the darkness. You can go underground and it is extremely dark, maybe pitch dark in places you go, but not in places that you start. Hugely important to us. The need to carry a torch and a light source, hugely important to us. But not to the level where you're not going to be able to play the game in the areas where you would expect to be able to. Oh, we want a big difference. We want that emotionality. I mean, part of, Rosie's mentioned, several people have mentioned, Dave mentioned in his debut, darkness, and that contributes to a feeling of adventure. Going underground without a light source, that should be scary. But walking through the forest where you spawn should not necessarily be something you can't do.
And to go along with that, one of the other parts of that question is that we have a living, breathing world that is going to be created with these games. Things can happen with changes in day-night. NPCs that are out, merchants, they may only be out during the day, just like you'd expect a shop owner only to be out during the day. So things can change from day to night based on what's going on in the world.
That's that emergent AI thing, man. Shopkeepers don't like night.
Yeah, shady merchants might though.
Yeah, works right. Black market merchants, that sort of thing.
Totally shady.
Any particular tunnel that we've shown?
To expand on the European player question before, because I think this is what I was reaching for. I'm in a guild with mainly European players, even though I'm from the US. A lot of them are trying to sign up for the beta. They're getting redirected to the Percebian website, or however you pronounce that. They're wondering, is it going to be something where it is regionally blocked, or are they going to have the ability to, without doing IP spoofs and things of that nature, jump on the US servers and sign up for a beta of the game?
Somebody started a petition, which is filling up my inbox with hundreds and hundreds of emails. I'd like to let them know that they can stop, that I've got the message. and we'll talk about it after we go back to the office.
I'm sorry, Dave, I'll stop sending emails.
You talk about a living, breathing world, and using the example of the orcs finding the lonely road. What if you're fighting the orc king? Is it the artificial intelligence good enough now that the bosses aren't scripted, but they learn from what's happening to them in the fight, and they adjust their tactics based on what's happening to them?
Yes, absolutely. What you just described is exactly what happens. To what extent we want it to what extent the difficulty of the encounter dictates, right? We can tune NPC intelligence up, so they always make really, really good choices, and it's very difficult to beat them. Or we can tune it down for the average content that we expect you to be fighting.
Yeah, watch out for those player character kiting NPC druids.
Yep. They're gonna quad kite you, get you in a quick punch, and then quad kite. That's great.
So to expand on the previous question, how quick can we expect this change? I suspect that days of camping placeholders for hours are long gone now.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah. That's not really how the content of the game even functions.
Where we spoke about, the boss figuring out who's doing the most damage and targeting them or focusing on them. How fast can we expect that?
So it's probably too early to be absolutely specific. It is a great question, but the point to take home is that the more difficult encounters will, in some cases, be characterized by more intelligent AI, where the utility of their actions is more rapidly effective. Right.
Now, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not usually a jerk, but today I have to ask a tough question. In his mea culpa last year, when he gave us the bad news at the opening ceremony, Mr. Smedley told us that not only would we see EverQuest Next at this event, but we'd also be able to play it. So obviously that did not happen, and has anybody given him grief over that? And when did that plan go out the window?
Games take a long time to make. I don't know how else to answer that.
Grief has been given.
Grief has been given.
Yes.
That's the way we can say it.
Ample grief.
When you're building something new, it's an undefined amount of time to actually build it. That's one of the reasons why we haven't announced a date for EverQuest Next. Part of that is because we're delving into the unknown, and a large part of it is because when we do bring those new features over into Landmark so that you guys can start experimenting with them, we really, really do want to listen to the feedback and be able to take what you have, the kind of advice and the comments and stuff that you have to heart, which means that we can't really put an end date on when EverQuest Next is going to launch. Otherwise, there's no way we can adapt, which would be exactly the reverse of what we want to do.
Waiting in anticipation is horrible. We're working really hard on making sure that the product that we deliver to you is exactly what we promise and something that you're really going to enjoy, and we appreciate your patience.
I was wondering about the mechanics of the deaths and the recovery of, what kind of consequences would be facing?
That one's really easy, and we're not ready to talk about it yet. Hate to put you off.
All right, since the world is ever changing and like with the new EverQuest 1 expansion, Piranha just changes overnight versus whenever a patch happens. Is it going to, like, are y'all going to implement anything where, say, like progressive patches where, say, like the world explodes like overnight, or not overnight, like it happens and then it's while players are actually playing instead of, hey, patch day, oh, the zone's completely different.
I mean, that's one of the things that Dave talked about when he talked about the rallying calls. That's exactly the kind of things you're talking about. Is exactly what we expect to be happening in the game all of the time. Not just on every Tuesday or every Thursday or whenever we do our patches. It's something that the world is constantly changing around you based on what you do and as the story progresses for what we're trying to show to the players.
That literally is the ongoing process of participation in the game. Right.
And the voxel-based world opened up that possibility for us because we don't have to build new art.
Yeah, so it doesn't just happen when the server comes down and the server comes up and now the world's exploded. It happens over time.
You could watch as the wall, as the front wall of Kinos fell down.
In fact, probably the opposite is going to be similar to the truth. We're probably going to be updating the servers with stuff that will happen in the future, not right now.
Right. 1 second. All right, so we're going to give away the first of the two Nagy hats, and I have a difficult question, so we're going to see how much homework you guys have done about the people that are working on this game. Dave Georgeson has been in the industry for a very long time, and he's the only one who's going to be able to tell me if you're right or not. Do you know any other game that's not based on SOE that Dave has worked on? Anybody? There's a gentleman in the back.
Chess?
World of Darkness?
No.
No?
Oh, wait, yeah, Rules of Dark, holy cow, that's a reach. Yeah, that was
the best answer of the entire series of panels.
I didn't know, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that was the first game I ever worked on professionally. I did paper and pencil games before that, but yeah, those SSI Gold Box D&D games, yeah, that was back when.
Well done.
There was Pools of Radiance, Secret of Silver Blades, Pools of Darkness, all those.
So the next question will be harder. Apparently that wasn't hard enough.
That's a great poll. I didn't know anybody knew that.
Hi guys, I'm excited about the game. The destructibility of the world is awesome. My question is, will there be environmental damage? Like if I go by Virot and there's a little temple thing, and I blow up the temple, the top part of the temple falls into the mob, will it like cause like a small stun or something?
So, environmental damage, yes, that is our intent. So when something is destroyed or blows up, that in and of itself might create additional damage for people nearby, like an AOE.
Hey, I was just at the class panel a few hours ago, and they were talking about how much you want to be able to switch your classes, change what you're doing, not have to be stuck under one role. How is this going to affect endgame loot for people and how you distribute it?
So loot distribution mechanics are not something we're talking about, sorry. But we know that that's potentially a problem. And we have fixes for that. So we know. I mean, we've been in those situations before. We know exactly what this could cause, and we're addressing those things. So I think you guys will be very happy with how loot works.
Well, I get to be a sacrificial beast lord for once for my raid force here. I was sent to ask about races, Ixar and Ratunga for the EQ next. Any word on them?
So during the presentation, during the debut, we announced 6 of the initial player races that are going to be available inside EQ Next. That is not the complete list, but we are not talking about anything else except for the 6 that we have put out there so far. We will be announcing that in the future, so look forward to when we talk about how we're going to expand that list.
So last night during one of the panels, the question came up about disrupting a rally call. You wanted to be the bad guy. Team gave a definitive yes, you're going to be able to do that. I'd really like you to elaborate on what system you're going to use to do that.
So the disruption probably comes in the form of not doing it. You can choose to not participate, but generally the rallying calls are not going to go in the reverse. Right? If the rallying call is to build up the city of Kinos, it's not going to happen in reverse.
Last night, Robert specifically asked if I want to be the bad guy. Stop Alice. You guys say
I can answer, I can discuss what we're talking about here, which is that there are many ways in which rallying calls can be progressed. And there are ways in which players can disrupt aspects of that progression. For instance, if there were a part of a rallying call that required you to collect wood in the area, because the NPCs need that, you could disrupt it by going and cutting down every tree that you see and making sure that there's no wood that anybody else can get. But that doesn't mean that not getting wood is going to stop other avenues of progression. So that's the means by which you can disrupt aspects of it.
We're not actually building a game that's set up so that you can grief. In attack mode. I just meant.
They get a definitive yes, and I'm like, that right there, you know what's going to happen.
Right.
I wanted to push it.
No, it's good clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand you're not going to tell us about what other races are going to be released, but can you tell us specifically what the trolls have been up to?
But that would be telling.
With all the multi-classing going on and the moving away from having to have certain classes, is that going to decrease group and raid size requirements as far as 24 players down to 20 or whatever, 5 in a group or whatever?
It's one of the things that we're not yet talking about.
But it's a discussion.
I really wish we could talk about all this raid stuff and everything like that, because I think that you guys are going to really like the answers, but it's just one of those things we're holding back. The line I keep using with everybody is we did open the black box, but we're keeping a bunch of surprises for the future. This is a long road, and we want to be able to talk about these things one at a time as we go through. That's why we gave a list of things that we were very proud of, and we know that we changed the game, because we want to talk about those a lot before we start getting into the other elements of the game. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, we basically chose our battles in coming here. Right.
That kind of superseded my question. I was wondering if you had an end goal of large-scale raids, perhaps.
An end goal what?
An end goal of large-scale raids in EverQuest Next?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's definitely the same question.
So it hasn't come up yet, but I'm going to tell you guys the same things I told the people in the class panel. We've decided as a group that every time somebody asks about a particular class, we randomly remove one from the game. I'm joking. We're not but we're not going to talk about anything that we haven't already talked about as far as races and classes go. So if that's your question, I apologize. Hopefully you have time to think of another one before you get up to the front of the room.
We just removed the Heather race from the game.
There's multiple.
I'm very interested in, and others in the community are very interested in building websites which help people look up their characters, improve their characters, like what we've done with EQ2U. And
Which is brilliant, by the way.
Thank you.
Serious, it's fantastic.
I'd like to know what support EverQuest Next and Landmark Game will have support for census on day one.
We certainly will have something similar, not necessarily on day one, but it may not be exactly census. But there are plans to expose as much data as we can to the community.
And as soon as we can, you'll know about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And
you specifically will know about it.
I have to say, Felton, everybody told me you were tall. I did not realize exactly what they meant.
I think he's about as tall as the character, actually.
don't know if you talked about membership fees, but will it be included as part of the All Access membership EQ Next?
Wow, we haven't made that decision yet. But I mean, SOE has always supported All Access. I wouldn't be really surprised if we don't have some version.
And would it have the same glitches like an EQ2?
Yes.
Glitches are in.
Until that first petition is resolved, so there's a lot of glitches with being an all-access member, playing your games exclusively, which I want to do, but there's still some challenges involved in all that.
Okay, that's fair. We should have we should go down that list and figure out what the issues are. But I just don't have an answer for you.
And that was such a great question.
I mean, we certainly don't want to leave glitches in. And when we build the new stuff for EQ in and for Landmark, of course we're not going to aim for that. So yeah, I would hope that they get removed.
I was so going to tell you that the EQ2 panel was down the hall, but it actually applied to us, so not about an answer anymore.
So you talked about some of mob difficulty coming from AI, adapting to player tactics and so forth. How do you prevent mobs from doing things that are smart, advantageous for them, but not fun? For example, if a hypothetical smart mob in, say, EQ1, thing for them to do would be to, chase the clerics and ignore everyone else. How do you prevent them from doing things like that?
So that's a great question. If that is a valuable thing for them to do, they'll do it. But I can't imagine that running around after a fleeing player, unless that player is the last player on the battlefield, would be advantageous to them, especially as other people are attacking them. When we can reveal how the combat AI works in detail, you'll see that just doesn't happen.
I mean, it sounds like the obvious solution for your hypothetical EQ1 mods would do that, but it's not really that advantageous for the monster, because as soon as he goes chasing after you, well, guess what? Everybody else pals on him and can do damage for free. So there's always pros and cons to tactics. So
threat assessment. There's a lot of threat assessment.
At the lower panel, we were told that every action will have some kind of consequences. So if you play the game in certain ways, then other factions or something will be interacting with you differently. So this means pretty much factions. At the same time, there are examples like in Skyrim. If you steal something and nobody sees that, you don't get a faction hit. Did you consider that approach?
I didn't.
Basically say if you wanted to steal something, or decide to steal.
It's the question of global knowledge of the world versus perceived knowledge.
So that's an excellent question, and I'll repeat it for everyone just so that we're clear. Effectively, if I steal this hat while you're all faced away from me,
he's going to get that.
And you didn't know that it was gone, am I credited with being despicable in any way or a thief? For factions, for the people in the hotel, my fellow team members, et cetera, et cetera. The answer is, if no one perceives what you have done, then they will not necessarily regard you negatively. It is theoretically possible that you will have some statistics that might be attached to your actions that are global, but it's a little too early to be more specific than that.
Yeah.
Certainly the baker would not hate you if you stole his muffin and he didn't know it.
Well, we'd still want you to be, rewarded for doing things when no one was there, right? It's a great question.
Well, just carrying on probably too far the Muffin Man example. He might, though, notice that the muffins are getting stolen and stop putting them out.
There you go.
Regarding combat mechanics, I understand it's not going to be a holy trinity, so there's no dedicated healer class. So everyone has some small ability to heal themselves. But what I see in the demo of the screenshots of the gameplay, looks like there's going to be a large dodge mechanic then as far as defending yourself. Well, a lot of my friends and players, when they say this politely, are older and did not grow up playing action games. So am I just going to have to tell them maybe this game's not for them?
So we obviously need to strike a very good balance between the active movement-based and the moment-to-moment dodging of things. And we're still working a lot of those details out. But I think that the happy medium that we strike will appeal to all the players in the audience. So
We're not going to build a game that supports one-button macroing.
for sure.
So you will definitely have to be more but even in EverQuest 2, if you're not one-button macroing, you're still usually pretty active. Even if you're standing in one spot, you're still busy doing other things. You're watching a million things. You're making sure your buffs are still going. You're doing all these kinds of different things. That's activity. Those are decisions that you're making on a rapid base. You should expect to have some level of interactivity like that in any game. And whether we do those exact same mechanisms or not, you're still going to be an active player. That's what a game is.
Right. I mean, even in the most static, massively multiplayer game, you are generally engaged in the activity of watching your hot buttons refresh and then stabbing them at the most efficient opportunity. And that is one thing that I can promise you are not going to be doing in this game. So if that's the sort of gameplay you're looking for, you are looking in the wrong place.
Jeff, you play games different than I do. I don't stab my keyboard.
We will be getting everyone up and looking at what's going on the screen and enjoying the process of playing the game.
I have a question about, you know how it's been said, you guys said that when you create orcs, you kind of just release them out onto this world. I'm wondering if the same is true for like wild animals.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Most certainly.
Think of an ecology that you would see anywhere else, right? The bears are going to be tracking down the deer, and hunters are going to be doing that as well. So NPCs are moving around the world and doing stuff.
What's true of the baker is true of the rabbit, the wolf, the orc,
the candlestick.
The dragon.
I know you can't really talk about PvP right now, but I was wondering if you could at least tell us if there are systems in place that are specifically designed for PvP or around PvP.
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer to that question is the same that has been before. We're just not ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
We certainly have talked about it a lot.
We have talked about
it's not packaged up with a bow.
Yeah, we don't want to give you the impression that we're putting you off or that we haven't done all that work.
I mean, my God, how can we have destructibility without talking about PvP?
First of all, thank you everyone for all your time and effort and sacrifice that you've put into this game so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would imagine that everyone here took time off from work or either legitimately or questionable with the 4-day virus. In addition, they just, myself included, saved for months just to come to this event. Overtime, begging, ship swaps, possibly collecting cans to get money to come here, that sort of thing. That being said, will the attendees of this event have something to look forward to, like say, I don't know, a guaranteed invite into beta?
Oh, you wanted to answer that?
Come on, Omid. Everybody
put you on the spot.
Omid and Dariani. Because if you're not ready to guide us,
I'm up there.
Well, I'm always involved. Hi, folks. Thanks for coming out and all the great questions. Right now, we haven't announced that, as you've heard many, many times today. But you guys are our best customers, and we love you, so we're always going to take care of you.
I apologize for putting Omid on the spot. Omid is our brand manager, and he controls all things on that front. And so if anybody had an answer, it was going to be him. But obviously, you'll get the answer later.
I have a question related to the interaction between trade skilling or crafting and the server that I've totally forgotten the name of, the game that precedes EverQuest Next. Landmark, that's it.
Landmark.
How closely are crafting and Landmark related? And for instance, are you going to be able to create things like a leather tent? And do you have to hunt down a deer to get that leather for that leather tent?
Yeah, so I mean, as we one of the panels we just had talked about that. We definitely craft. You're going to craft everything in the game. If you want an obsidian couch, you've got to go get the obsidian and make the couch. That's a great question. So we haven't announced all the features of Landmark, and being able to build things out of leather is one of the things that we definitely want to have, and we'll release more information in the future.
1 second. We have to give away another nag of the tent, so that I don't forget. Let's get this away from Jeff before it disappears.
Mind being considered a villain?
So, well, you don't mind being considered one? Everybody knows you're one. Okay, so we're making this up on the spot. So I put Dave up on the hot seat for the last question, and I'll do the same thing to myself. I've been with the company for a while. Some of you may know me from previous games. Do any of you know what my character name was in EverQuest? No. I'm disappointed. You're not allowed to. No. Nice. Let's see. What do we know? What do we know about Rosie? Okay, this is one that you guys should know. We're going to pick on Rosie here. Based on Rosie's Twitter handle, what is her alternate occupation? Come on, you got to know what her Twitter handle is. We got her here. Oh, no.
Nice dude. Reporter.
Close enough. A rap artist. She's Rosie Rap. Come on. You know this, Jeff? Or Dave? I don't even know who you work for now. Sorry. All right. Anybody got any ideas? Questions for the people to answer?
Ask a good question. Some cool EQ question.
What class did Alistair play?
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, we've
pretty
talked
well
about that all weekend.
Oh,
come on, Jeff.
We got a question out there.
You got it. Oh yeah. No, that's not allowed. You're his brother. Okay. You know the answer to this question.
Yes.
Anything, Jeff? Come on. EQ question.
EQ board question.
Is Bill in?
Okay, I've got a.
We're at the highest, efficiency at the highest kill rating of anyone who's been at the beginning of that.
Oh wow. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not getting this hat. Brian, you got a mic. You know EQ. Give us an EQ question. You're the lawyer.
They're going to be too easy or way too hard, probably.
So aim in the middle.
Keep asking until somebody gets.
How about this? I've got one.
All right.
What NPC dropped the thick bended belt? No? Yes.
All right. Froglook Supplier was apparently.
So the hardest design challenge we've faced in a long time is asking a question at a panel.
Yes.
No, it's how to give away a nag for nag.
We're only good at giving answers, not questions.
Coming up with the question was not in my best interest.
Yes, he didn't want one because he wanted to steal it.
In regards to the concept of the rallying calls, everything you have where the world is kind of building itself and ever changing, and that actually doesn't get repeated again. does this add design challenges that you're coming across, and the idea that as you come up with ideas and you use them, they can't be used again in that same fashion? Players have experiences that people don't have, or maybe miss it if they're out for a couple of months. And how are you looking at addressing those types of challenges?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question. Can you repeat that? Not the whole thing, I got the last part of it.
Well, just the whole thing kind of wraps around the idea that rallying calls and all those types of quests, once they happen and the world changes, the next one's going to have to be different. It can't be the same thing over again.
Oh, you mean like we just keep building city after city after city? Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have a bevy of things that we're not going to tell you today because it would spoil things. And you build stuff, and you destroy stuff, and you fight stuff, and there's all the typical things that you would expect to do as part of an evolving world. You'll be doing those things. It'll be cyclical. You definitely won't be repeating over and over again the same process.
So, and I think you were curious as to the design challenges associated with that stuff. There are design challenges to be certain, but they are analogous to the challenges that have already existed in MMOs as we've stepped through the process of expanding them. We're effectively automating that process based on the knowledge that we've gained, for instance, in Ryan's case, working on 13 EverQuest expansions. Rallying calls kind of assume that sort of content within themselves, if that helps with clarity.
And keep in mind that the same mechanisms can be really obviously the same mechanisms. Through different stories and different conditions that advance the rallying call and so on and so forth, there won't be any lather, rinse, repeat kind of situations.
Just to clarify, because I was a little confused on the question, so I clarified with the gentleman. It's about the question of what about the content that people have missed because they took a time away from the game during a rallying call, and are we going to have mechanisms for dealing with that or addressing that?
So
that was more of what the question was about.
We have discussed that in detail, and that's a great question. We're not quite ready to talk to you about the specifics.
There's a lot of variables with that, guys. So I mean, we don't want to not answer you, but there's a lot of factors to be weighed. So.
All right, so I've got 194 questions from Reddit, but I understand I can only answer or ask one rather. So the top question on Reddit right now is for me to ask about racism. Specifically, ask if NPCs and or entire towns of humans will kill you on sight for being a dark elf and vice versa.
Oh, KOS racism?
Yeah, good question. So I think we answered something similar to this the other day, and it just touches on the stuff we've already talked about. We aren't going to release the details of the lore, but when you log into the game, orcs won't like you, and they'll kill you. That's a race in the game. What you do will determine what the races do and how they view you. So, without giving away spoilers to how the story works, the answer is you will be KOS to something. Some people, some races, for sure.
Will those be races that other players are a part of?
Right.
And that's the answer we can give.
That's the answer we can give.
This goes back to that maybe.
Yes, maybe is an answer.
Maybe.
Okay, well, first of all, you guys need a friendlier method to get up here for people with moving issues. But we talked about with the lore panel, all the different things, and you want stories and such like that. Have you guys considered player-contributed stories, such as through Kindle Worlds?
That's a great question. I'm going to defer to Terry or Dave for that one.
Well, I mean, the answer is that in as many ways as possible, we want to involve the community in our games. And the specifics for something like that will have to come out at a different time as we determine the feasibility and things like that. So.
That's another to be discussed in the future.
Man, I want to tell you.
Yeah. I think you can all see as people think of logical extrapolations about what we've talked about, right? We've got a lot of ground to cover over the course of the next couple months. We're going to do that. We commit to the process of communication with you, hopefully in ways that you've never seen before. We've talked about it several times throughout the course of the weekend. We will follow through. You'll see that. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. You're asking us questions about it.
We're really serious about you guys helping us build the world. That's as much as we can say.
Really serious. So without answering.
Really serious.
How's it going, guys? My name's Paul. Hey, Paul. I've been playing EverQuest since I was 12 years old. Been playing a long time with all my buddies. We've gotten used to, playing with groups, having, lots of friend connections in the game. That being said, having 40 different classes and you being able to change whenever you want. Granted, it might be hard to get each of them, but once you get them, does that mean that the game is going to be more solo-based because you can just change to something that you need to be to complete something?
No, I mean, we certainly have content that will require you to be with other people. Totally. So we talked about rallying calls as one of the pieces of content, and we mentioned, Dungeons and Dragons and some of the panels. There's group content out there. It requires a group. Doesn't matter how many classes you can collect, you're still only one dude.
It's a great question, right? In all of our panels and in the debut, we focus specifically upon what's new and what's different about EverQuest Next and EverQuest Next Landmark. We have not necessarily spent a lot of time talking to you about what is the same, right? There's a lot that is the same. One of those things are the mechanisms that allow people to create and perpetuate social bonds so that the critical mass that we gain in whatever way related to the game that we're building remains. So that you can entice your friends based on the enjoyment you're having in the game. You can get them to come and join and then stick around. So you don't have to worry about who you're going to be grouping with next week. This is literally... consider it, Dave talks about his grails, right? There's lots of hidden grails, and the community is one of them, right? Everything that we're doing, our entire focus is driven toward building that community and keeping it.
You may not look for a specific class to help you overcome a challenge, but you will be looking for good players.
Right. Skilled players, people who care about their game, who invest time in the game, who are fun to hang around with, who have great emotes. I mean, literally, we're trying to give every tool in the toolbox to people to reach out and find those folks who they share like interest with, and to form those in-game relationships.
Right. Yeah, social interactions and social bonds are extremely important for MMO. They're the backbone of what an MMO is. And we do that. We take that filter when we're looking at everything and how it's going to promote that sort of thing. Well, yeah, EverQuest is probably the best example I can think of promoting social interaction and social bonds. I mean, more so than any game I've seen in the last decade. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is the same. It's just our mechanisms might be different.
But certainly our understanding of interdependence and the need for your fellow community members could be stronger.
So with all this construction that's eventually going to be happening all over the world, is there going to become a time when the orcs are like, we have nowhere left to, should we just go back to Crushbone? I mean, are we just going to hang out in there? Or can we maybe go back and get an army and take down all these houses? Get rid of this neighborhood of all these players.
Sounds like it would be fun.
That's a good. I mean, what you touched on is if we allowed all of the players to build all over the place, then the AI would do that. You described the situation that would force them back to their homeland.
It's like if I made an alt, would he too then be able to make a house, and then I could just keep creating alts, making more houses, and then just make this whole big army of houses, and nothing can be there anymore.
Well, EverQuest Next will have mechanisms to prevent you from just doing that kind of thing. And as far as the orcs go, you might push them back for a while, but eventually, like I mentioned in the debut, they don't like getting their butts kicked, and they're probably going to have some mechanisms to come back at you.
Right.
And just for reference, we have about 7 minutes left.
So we were talking at the Golden Age panel about how everyone's got their role. You have your adventurers, you have your harvesters, you have your traders. Everyone wants to do something. In EverQuest, you had every class had some sellable ability. Wizards could port,
Oh, sure.
things like that. Do you guys plan to carry that over and take it with you into EverQuest Next?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer to. But I mean, the idea of transport and the abilities that are actually commodities is a great thing to bring to Roundtable, right? The desire that players have to market themselves as adventurers is certainly something that's very powerful in EverQuest. So we'd be silly not to have stuff like that. It's a great idea.
And we do have a pretty good understanding of that interdependence. A lot of people on that team now are actually the engineers of that interdependence. So you can imagine, like every other feature that we look at and draw upon, those things that have value, those things that help us build the community are certainly on the table for consideration.
Yep.
All the current games on the market have a set of progression. You go from 1 to 50, have all your abilities, then you grind away gear. EverQuest has always been about customization. Are we going to see alternate advancement points? Alternate advancements at all?
So that's a good question because we don't have AAs. We certainly have what we would consider to be alternate advancement. The game, as one of the slides that actually didn't have time for in the class panel talked about horizontal progression and a desire for us to expand outward. The AA system allowed you as a max level player or a high level player in EverQuest to expand your horizons to get new features for your class, etc. That's really what our game is about through the multi-class system, through being able to collect classes and be able to expand each of those. And when we say that, tiering up your class, and depending on how much time that takes, is only the first step. Because you got to find, assuming you want to engage in any multi-class building, you got to find the right items for the class. You've got to find
invest in the skill.
Right. There's a lot of time spent there that is very similar to what the AA system was. So.
It fills that niche, in other words.
Yes.
At least in what we've discussed so far.
As a trade skiller, I really like the idea of the classes, being able to change classes in the combat system. But as a trade skiller, I want to make the best blueberry muffin there is.
The Muffin Man, right? This is a great theme.
Working to build that blueberry muffin. Once when I get there, can I also build the best armor and then go and build the best sword as a crafter?
You're going to really like the crafting stuff when we get to announcing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really great stuff in it.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, but it's a complete separate subject. It would need its own panel, and we need time to put it together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
When we say we take crafting seriously, we take it very seriously, which is why we can't have a 5-minute conversation about it.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes left, guys.
At when they were showing the parkour style movement, the phrase that was used was, "You don't have to push any extra buttons." Between that and having 8 abilities, is there going to be gamepad support?
Is there going to be what?
Gamepad support for the PC.
That's certainly desired.
Yeah.
We're building a PC game first.
Right.
We're going to get all the kinks worked out and stuff like that using traditional keyboard and mouse. And then after we're done with that, then we'll look at other platforms and other options as far as peripherals and stuff go. The Oculus version is going to be, no, I'm just kidding.
Oculus version.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to look into all that stuff later on.
Hello. This is related to construction, home, and possibly NPCs. Say, for example, you're making a house 2-story, whatever, or like a port city or something. Is it possible to attach a business to it, like say a tavern for the house, or like docks for the port city, or something like that?
That'd be really cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well played.
You have good ideas. Good ideas. Please engage in the roundtable.
Yes. Please.
Regarding faction or its equivalent in the emergent AI, to what extent will it shut players off from contact? For example, if me and my guildies start up in Kinos and do like good communities, clear out moles nearby, but one of our guildie friends does what he always does with his character, which is kill merchants and sell loot to the gnolls. Is he going to be shut out from questing with us because he's not going to come into Kinos or share our quests or anything? Unless, of course, he
You know, you really shouldn't be associated with that person.
Very nice.
So we no place for them in him in our guild because he can't quest with us.
So that's a great question. One of the things that we want you to be able to play how you want and who you want with the friends that you have. So having locked in exclusivity for I can't go to Keynotes anymore would be difficult. There's a balance to be struck there, and it's something that we're still working through. So that's a great question.
Well, and remember that the game remembers the things that you've done, and it impacts the world around you. We want you to be making choices that matter, and so there are going to be consequences for the choices of your friend that are going to be different than the consequences for the action you choose to partake in.
The fact is, your character made choices, and there are consequences.
Right.
Welcome to EverQuest Next.
Yeah, it'll be. We got a balance, so we'll work on that.
One of my most treasured moments within early EverQuest was taking an adventure down a path in Greater Fate Arc and not knowing where I was going at all. What type of map system are you guys going to have? And will it have waypoints and hand holding or not at all?
The first maps we're concentrating on are for landmark.
Right.
And then the features and stuff that we develop through that system will probably propagate over to EQN.
Well, and some of the things that we've said a number of times is that we want players playing our game, not reading about our game, not looking on a wiki, not being handheld through the game, but actually playing the game. It's important to us throughout many aspects of the game.
Yeah, we don't want people alt tabbing out of the game to read a map that shows them where they're trying to find something.
With the focus on the social interaction, are you looking at building in tools that allow people to share their social moments, capture video, share screenshots, but integrate it directly into the game so that we can tell these stories and keep these memories, but while we're adventuring, it's not something we do separately?
Yes. I mean, there's so much. The world has embraced social media in such a big way that we'd be foolish not to have the ability for you to share these things with people who weren't online. I mean, record these moments and share them with your friends who weren't even playing the game.
And you can see some of that support already in Planet 2 platform.
Creating and sharing your own story is what this game is about.
Our company is committed to that course of action.
You're going to have unique stories. It would be cool to share them.
Yep.
Any consideration or thought into offline gameplay, like vendors or owner NPCs or harvesters or anything like that? That would. I think it's a lot of fun to be able to leave, come back, and see what you got, or what when you log back in, or what's there other than just what items are on the marketplace.
So the extent of all that stuff, we aren't talking about in detail, but we did mention that for Landmark, being able to queue the things that you want to do, queue the things that you want to see in an offline manner, view the stuff, and say, okay, tonight I've got a laundry list of things that I want to go see and check out, based on these builders, based on the people I've subscribed to, etc. So offline gameplay is really cool, right? So we want to support that to some extent.
But some of the stuff you may be used to being offline may not be offline because we want more active participation in the game. So we're definitely taking a new approach to it, a different approach to it than we've done in the past.
So that's the end of the questions. Our time is up, and unfortunately, we're going to have to ask everybody to leave relatively quickly. Don't hurt anybody, please. They usually get this for the banquet, so they're waiting for us to be done, but don't do this yet. One quick second. Now that we're done with all of the panels for eConnect, we appreciate all of everybody coming to the panels, asking their questions, listening to what we have to say. But we are very serious about being involved in the development of this game. Please go to the website. Please take a look at, we already have 4 questions on the roundtable for people to look at, respond to, and go to the forums and talk about. And every other week, we'll be releasing additional topics that we want to hear from you on. So please continue to give us feedback, continue to talk to us, and together we will make something that is incredible and that you've never seen before, or at least that's our goal. So thank you guys.